All right. Uh, I wanted to talk a little bit about how Tolkien got me into gardening. I haven't done anything like this before, just chatting to the camera, but it's worth a shot. I thought it'd be nice to change it up instead of text to do a little video. Uh, so hopefully I won't bore you guys to death, and hopefully you'll enjoy what I have to say. This really is just my absolute love for Tolkien and the way he describes nature in his storytelling and the way he turns a simple farmer or a hobbit into a hero. And I love that juxtaposition between this idea of these great warriors, and then they're also linked to these very simple folk who change change the world, change Middle Earth, I should say. And that in itself is just pure beauty. I absolutely love that. I also want to talk about another book which is well worth reading. It's very much in line with The Hobbit. It's very easy to read, but it is Tolkien, Farmer Gills of Ham. So if you haven't read that, we'll get to that a little bit later. But I want to start us off with just reading some of Tolkien's book, The Lord of the Rings. This one I think is in the Two Towers. I can't tell. This is all three books mashed up into one. So it's pretty intense. But I find when I'm trying to get quotes together, I end up just falling in love and reading or listening. I'm listening to Andy Serkis on Spotify read The Lord of the Rings, and that's really cool too. But I find that I just lose quotes because I'm just in the world, and I'll be like, I'll come back to that, and then it's lost, completely lost to time. So this one is one that I found, and I'm just going to paraphrase it because otherwise I'll be reading for ages, but it will definitely get us into the mood of what I want to talk about today. All about them were small woods of resinous trees, firs, cedar, and cypress, and other kinds of unknown in the Shire, with the wide glades amongst them, and everywhere there was wealth of sweet-smelling herbs and shrubs. The long journey from Riverdale had brought them through south of their own lands, but until now, in this more sheltered region, had the hobbits felt the change of a clime. Here, spring was already busy about them. Fronds peered moss and mould, larches and green-fingered, small flowers were open in the turf, birds were singing. Lithien, the garden of Gondor now desolate, kept still a shriveled, dried loveliness. Amazing. As we describe nature, we'll keep going. Many great trees grew there, planted long ago, falling into untended age amid a riot of careless descendants. And groves of thickets there were tamarisk and pungent terebinth, of olive and of bay, and there were Jupiters and myrtles and thyme that grew in bushes, all with their own woody creeping stems mantled in deep tapestry. The hidden stones of sages of many kinds putting forth blue flowers or red or pale green. The marjoramens and new sprouting parsleys, and many herbs of forms and scent beyond the garden lore of Sam. Amazing. And I'll just move forward a little bit. Lily flowers nodded their half-open heads in the grass. Deep green grass beside the ponds were falling streams, halted in cool hollow on their journey down to Anduin. If that doesn't get you in the mood, that is just one of hundreds and hundreds of descriptive ways that Tolkien makes you fall in love with nature again. And that combination of both fantasy and nature is the thing that drives me to want to continuously create lore and story and research mythology of plants, because it is just, they're just so much more than just a plant that grows a strawberry, that grows a berry. There is history and lore, mythology, biblical whatever it might be, you could follow that plant back, and somewhere along the lines, it has folklore. And I feel like we've lost that a lot today. We've kind of moved past a lot of that, and plants seem to be just plants. So I would love to be able to revive some of that, because it truly gives plants characters, and then when you give plants characters, people remember them and they move forward with the next generation, which is really important, because the less we get connected with our food, etc., we know the rest. But I thought that was a way of getting us into the vibe of the way Tolkien speaks of nature. It's beautiful. It's so cooling. Sorry, I got a coffee ready, so I'll just make a coffee quickly. And then it kind of links into me and my childhood and how I got to the point of this. I mean, originally it was the movies, right? I started off with the movies, and that, and going to the Easter show and getting a Lord of the Rings bag, and in that bag you got a hobbit cape. And I remember me and my friend running around the bush, barefoot, pretending to be hobbits. And that is some of my fondest memories. And maybe I'm still trying to chase that in what I'm doing right now with turning my land into a syntropic food forest, or you know, at the moment working in conservation too. That's been a big part of my life, working with plants. And I think moving forward I might take that a step further in, but I need to continue adding fantasy into that, because it makes conservation so much more beautiful when you're studying the law. Indigenous law too is also fun to deep dive. It's freezing in here, so I need something warm to drink. I did want to, I've got my computer here because I'll just ramble and I need to pull myself back. But there is this quote from Tolkien, and you've probably heard it before, but I'm in fact a hobbit in all but size. I like gardens, trees, and unmechanized farmlands. I smoke a pipe, and I like good, plain food. I can relate to that very much. Maybe not the good, plain food, and that's about it, but I do love unmechanized farmlands. Hence, I've got myself a scythe, and it's been fantastic. And my partner recently got me my first pipe. I'm yet to smoke it. Maybe I'll grow my own tobacco for it, but that's a completely different series, I think. Growing and drying my own tobacco. But then another quote in the Lord of the Rings, and that's when we open. It's one of the first pages. It's page 25 on this one. This is what book is this one? 2025 edition. HarperCollins 2020. Where does it say it? I think it was 2025, but I can't quite remember. There's this little quote here, very small, but it kind of gets you in the mindset of the Hobbit home. Inside Bag End, Bilbo and Gandalf were sitting with open window over a small room looking out west on the garden. The late afternoon was bright and peaceful. The flowers glowed red and golden. Snapdragons and sunflowers in the nasturtium trailing over the turf walls and peeping into the round windows. "How bright your garden looks," says Gandalf. "Yes," says Bilbo, "I'm very much fond of it, and of all the dear old Shire. But I think I need a holiday." That's a very popular little line there. But that in itself, the description, you know, the snapdragons and the sunflowers and the nasturtium, it motivates me to want to put those plants in around my property, around my caravan at the moment, when I'm doing up. Which, I mean, I have plenty of nasturtium. That stuff grows wild. Snapdragons I do not have, and I have Mexican sunflower, which is a very giving plant. Uh, I wanted to talk about Farmer Gills of Ham. This gorgeous little book is well worth getting your hands on. I won't spoil it for you because it's actually a really cute adventure, and I love the character of Farmer Gills. Very, very much a farmer and not a hero. And I think that's what Tolkien did here, is creating these characters that were not quote unquote heroes. And there's this beautiful, my favorite bit is when he comes face to face with a dragon. And the dragon says something along the lines of like, I haven't seen a knight in a very long time. And Farmer Gills replies, I'm not a knight, I'm a farmer. And I love that. It reminds me a lot of in the movies when Faramir is like, who's this, your bodyguard? And Samwise is like, I'm his gardener. That's a great quote. It's that kind of connection to these people. I think there's also another quote in there about Faramir. I think it's in the books when Faramir is like, well, if you hold gardeners to such high honor, the Shire must be a wonderful place. You know, something like that. I can't remember that quote. I should have grabbed that one before we started. But I do want to talk about my favorite part of the Lord of the Rings, which is actually the last bit. There is no section of it in the movies. It is only in the book. So if you have not read the book and you don't want to read the book, but you love the Shire and you love the hobbits, this last section is my favorite. It is when the four hobbits go back to the Shire and they see that it's been taken over. The farmlands have been destroyed. There's mills that are milling all the old trees, and it's been taken over by Sharky, which is Saruman. And the beautiful hobbit holes have become brick houses. There's a lot of crook people around. So the four hobbits come back, and they come back as kind of heroes. They come back as kind of, obviously all the things and the worldly things they've seen and done, they come back as these strong men-like characters, and they drive out the evil. And after they do all that, there's this beautiful part where they're restoring the Shire, and Sam remembers the little box of soil or is it seeds and soil from Galadriel. And it is this scene where he restores the Shire to what it once was. And I love this bit because right now it parallels with the way the world is at the moment. You know, you can get paid quite a lot of money from extracting from the earth, but to restore, to regenerate, it isn't the same. They don't, how to explain this in a way, but I guess in simple terms, if you're getting paid with money, you won't get the same amount of money for restoring the earth that you do from extracting. And I believe that will change one day. I believe the world will value restoration, but in this story here, it's that Sam takes it upon himself, and all the hobbits get together and they rebuild the old farmlands and the way it once was, and the way they treated nature, etc., etc., the way they treated their gardens, which was lost when the mechanized industrial, I guess, age came about. But so this is Sam running around, putting in seeds. Now, whereabouts was this quote? Well, here's a little bit about what happened to the Shire. The trees were the worst lost and damaged, For at Sharky's bidding they had been cut down recklessly far and wide over the Shire, and Sam grieved over this than anything else. For one thing, this hurt would take long to heal, and only his great-grandchildren, he thought, would see the Shire as it ought to be. I love that. Then suddenly one day, for he had been too busy for weeks to give a thought to his adventures, he remembered the gift of Galadriel. So Sam planted saplings in all the places where specifically beautiful and beloved trees had been destroyed, and he put a grain of his precious dust in the soil at the root of each. He went up and down the Shire in his labour, but if he paid special attention to Hobbiton and Bywater, no one blamed him. And at the end he found that still he had a little bit of dust left, so he went to the 3 farthing stone, which was near the centre of the Shire, so no matter, and he no matter, and he cast it into the air with his blessings. The little silver nut he planted in the party field where the tree had once been, and he wondered what would come of it. All through the winter he remained patient as he could and tried to restrain himself from going around constantly to see if anything had happened. And that's just a beautiful little part of the story as we kind of sum up this great adventure. But it's that restoration, and Sam's character is such a fascinating one to deep dive because he's just a gardener, and he's gone on this big adventure, and he's always thinking about home and his garden and the simple things, and he's been placed in such a chaotic part of the world, but when he comes home he kind of resets and regenerates the earth, and I love that about him. And that's about it in terms of my little quote session, and that's about it when really talking about how it got me into Lord of the Rings. It's very simple, right? It's the way Tolkien describes nature, the way the hobbits are portrayed as these great heroes, even though they're just simple gardeners and everyday humble folk. And that, for some reason, has just resonated with myself and so many other people out there. So many other people feel exactly the same. And I believe that homesteading is that, is returning to that simple dwelling, that hobbit house in the Shire with a colourful door and a garden out the front and a clothesline with little clothes. And it reminds me of when you eventually, if you ever go to the Hobbiton movie set, they've done a beautiful job in making that feel so comfortable and charming, and the gardens there are just so lovely. They're always flowering, and I actually wanted to work there at one point, but I never did. Maybe one day. Fun. So yeah, that's kind of my little part of the Lord of the Rings that I wanted to share. And if you enjoyed me doing this, I'll happily do more. I've got plenty to talk about. I want to talk about citrus at the moment because I'm getting all these cool books about citrus and I'm reading and learning about. So if you're interested in continuing this little chat, reply and send me an email back, and we can move forward, and I'll hopefully make some more. Anyway, have a good one. I'll chat to you later.